Parshas Behar, in the introduction to the laws of Shemitah, into all the details, the pasuk reads, "Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe Behar Sinai lemor." Wondering why the Torah specifically spells out Har Sinai, Rashi quotes one of the most famous Mamar Chazal, "Mata malomar Behar Sinai v'ala kol Torah kula ne'amra miSinai. Lomar lecha ma Shemitah ne'amra b'chaleha ufrateha v'diktokeiha miSinai av kol hamitzvos kalehan ufratehan v'diktokeihan miSinai." That just by Shemitah, all the intricacies, all the details of the law are spelled out in Parshas Behar, comprehensively so too for all of the mitzvos. All the details were spelled at Har Sinai, even if not explicitly in the psukim. Now the Rambam quotes a certain Gaonic view that took the statement very much all encompassingly, that even disputes that later arose, whether it be Abai and Rava, Ravina and Ravashi, really all said the conclusions were said to Moshe at Har Sinai, and any dispute afterwards is really a lapse in memory, an attempt at reconstructing what was originally said. In the Rambam, of course, used this as somewhat scandalous, and says no, what the Torah, what this Mamar Chazal is specifically referring to, is halacha Moshe miSinai, or perushim and mukubala miSinai. He gives the example by Sukkah, basukos teishvu shivas yamim. The fact that the obligation is only on males, that it has to be 10 tefachim high, that wayfarers, sick people are exempt. These are the types of things where there is no dispute, where it is unanimous. These were said to Moshe at Har Sinai, but anything where dispute arose or new circumstances emerged, that any of the halakhic processes that is a result of utilizing the Yud Gimel Midos and Dreshes Bohen, the principles of exegesis, logic, the values of the Torah, and that is not a lapse in memory, but rather an application of human intervention to try to figure out what the laws should be. Now, the Rambam is still very interesting if you look in the introduction to the Parashat Mishnayos, because for him, it's still ultimately one truth that you were trying to reach at. For him, different conclusions arising at different interpretations of the text with the Yud Gimel Midrash and Drashos and with the principles of exegesis, actually. The dispute arises as a result of kind of an error in the mathematical formula, that Moshe was given the right way to do this kind of analysis, and throughout the Masorah, as dispute arose, a kind of a question emerged, or an inability to kind of use the tools as appropriately as they should, and that's how kind of this dispute emerged. So still, dispute arises as a result of not utilizing these, this mode of interpretation properly. However, the Rambam, while it seems very rigid in terms of his binary of truth and not truth, in his introduction to the Parashat Mishnayos, his view actually seems more complicated upon further analysis of the halakhic constructs, because we know that there are times where we do rely on the more lenient position. Now, this might not be the case by D'Oraisa, although it's somewhat complicated. At the very least, the principles that apply to D'Rabbanan and for the Rambam of Torah Shabbat Pev, Takanos, and Gezeros are still ultimately using the same principles of exegesis, of trying to apply the values of the Torah to new circumstances. And the Rambam admits, whether it be b'shas adchak or by hefsed meruba, or halakhic tivra mekel ba'aval, although all these are very different in their application, it's very clear that sometimes, and seemingly even in D'Oraisa, the Rambam views the first day of Avelos as D'Oraisa, that we are willing, and there's a question by Shas HaChalak and Hefsed Meruba in different contexts, but that's not for now. But at the very least, we're willing to rely on the more lenient position. But if it's really true that we're kind of ultimately trying to achieve this divine truth through through the method of analysis, through our application, if we come to a certain conclusion, so then what would be the reasoning to be able to deviate? So for the Rambam, it appears, at least the way I've understood it, that his view is somewhat more complicated. The example I like to think about, is if Chazal never instituted brachos, so then would I be doing something wrong if I didn't make a bracha? L'chora not, meaning I wouldn't necessarily be kind of achieving the ultimate truth or divine will, Ratzon Hashem in this world, wouldn't be reverberating his kingship in the way that he wants me to, the way the Chazal understood, but I wouldn't be doing anything wrong. Maybe I'd be doing something that's like less ultimately true, but it wouldn't be wrong. It would be less true, if you will. So too, with other positions of different ways of trying to understand the values of the Torah. In philosophic terminology, call it Platonic ideals, but there's different ingredients. There's different values, whether it be kind of a synthesis of din, rachamim, kedusha, the interplay between v'ahavta l'recha kamocha and tochiach es hamisecha, of trying to really understand the values of the Torah, and people look at it from different perspectives, giving different points of emphasis in the Torah, in Torah Shabbat Peh, and you arrive sometimes at very different conclusions. Now, while one position might win out, based on factors and additional considerations, that doesn't necessarily mean that the other position is entirely flawed. It contains conceptual truth, even if it doesn't necessarily assume kind of the complete, ultimate truth. And with that, perhaps a very much a message emerges, because we could argue, right, that this is kind of the brilliance of the Torah's architecture that allows for these exceptions. The system is engineered with supreme meta parameters, whether it be darchei noam, v'chai bohem, and these factors cause reapplication of the primary mathematical truth of the Torah that the Rambam seems so insistent on. Whether when it would financially break a family, or when a mourner is psychologically shattered, the Torah's meta-ideals are threatened. And at times when the minority positions are compelling enough, every case to be analyzed individually, these miscalibrated truths, built of pure Torah values, allow the system in its design to pivot. So, Ma Inyan Shmita Eitzel Har Sinai, Sinai didn't just give us the winning laws, but the possibilities of analysis of the alternative positions. There are different conceptual truths that reflect Hashem's will, even if in practice the weighing of different factors and values force us into a singular conclusion. This teaches us the importance of understanding alternative positions and perspectives, arguments, and appreciating that which doesn't ultimately hold up to scrutiny. Every argument, even the ones that lose the vote in the base medrash, whether it be in the political sphere, oftentimes contains underlying truth, reasoning, logic that we need to be akin to, and sometimes its foundations will be applied and repurposed in new contexts. Intellectual honesty is always invaluable, and even if the things we know to be untrue, they all can contain truth value. Sometimes they will even be necessary to activate when a fellow Jew needs it most. Shabbos.